What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Saturday. You are currently tuning in for the Asian Goalie Show. I'm your host, Felix. I'm also known as the Asian Goalie. So, the mission of this show is really to create the most impactful platform for beer league goalies to learn, share, and collaborate. This Twitch channel is the one and only one live channel where I collaborate with others and have live interactions with all of you. And if you don't want to miss any future live experience, consider clicking that follow button. And by any chance you're watching this as a replay, if you're watching this from YouTube, don't forget to click on subscribe if you haven't done so. So this episode is the first of the month, which means that we have a brand new theme. So being a beer league goalie myself, I slowly realized that how I see about the game has been really a direct reflection of how I see about my life. When I first started playing beer league hockey, I remember I was like restricted in how I play due to how I care so much about the stats that I put on and how other people think about me. And after a couple of years, I realized that these thoughts doesn't serve me well. And now I'm not only enjoying myself so much better during the games, but I think it helped me in influencing my team so that we can actually perform better as a team because I start to contribute more and verbally and how I see it. So I also realized that this mental game that I've been playing has connected with me with a lot of beer league goalies out there. And you know what? I actually got in touch with my guest that I'm gonna invite it today, and he is very welcoming and supportive in talking about this topic. And I really love it because I think it's tied back to the topic of this month, which is the mental game we all play. We're going to discuss mental health and how it impacts our lives and our game. So our guest today, we have Justin, and he is the founder of the Goalie Guild and a mental health initiative called Lift the Mask. So if you a beer league goalie, you might have already known this initiative. So I'm very glad because he has been in the field for at least 2-3 years, and he's also an NHL emergency goalie. So he has extensive experience in both the game and the topic of the mental health for sure. So before I introduce him, I want to make sure that everybody is aware this is an Ask Me Anything environment, meaning that if you have any questions, you are part of this conversation, not just me and Justin. So let's get the show started. Justin, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Great. So great to have you here. And I remember how welcoming you were when I first joined the Lift the Mask Facebook group. I was just like, oh my god, the founder already connected with me. Like, I never had somebody who was just so welcoming after, the group getting so big. I really appreciate you are so, inclusive to me.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's great to connect with you and anyone who joins the Lift the Mask Facebook group. Like, it's an awesome community. It's growing fast and everyone's just like super welcoming because it's a safe environment, just like you said. And so, yeah, happy to have you in there. I was pumped, and it was great, having a couple conversations before today.
Right. Thank you. So I wanted to start off with the first question, and this question may already covered in some of your website and all that, but I want to kind of hear that in person from you. Is how did you get into the topic of mental health? Like, why this becomes so big to you and you want to make it like so impactful for others?
Yeah, I mean, as a goaltender, it's like it's a thinking man's game or thinking woman's game, right? Like you're on an island in the crease and you're constantly thinking about what's going on. It's hard to shut your brain off as a goaltender. So I think from a very young age, I always recognized that the mental game was a big part of being a goaltender. And so as I got older and I started to learn more about, the ins and outs of the position and, how to optimize my performance and how to overcome losses or bad goals, I just realized that there was a very strong correlation between my performance within my mind and how I performed out on the ice wherever I was playing, whether it was high school or beer league. And so I think professionally speaking, in terms of getting involved in mental health and, mental performance for goaltending, was about 8 or 9 years ago when I started to have conversations with NHL goalie coaches. Back then I was, a budding journalist, and I was writing for NHL.com. And I was really fortunate to be a member of the Professional Hockey Writers Association. So I would go cover Avalanche games here in Denver. And after the games, instead of going up to the big stars on the ice, the shooters and the defensemen, I was going straight to the goalie coach and the goalies and just picking their brain about like, oh, what were you seeing in this situation? Like, how did it feel to come out of this game with a win? Or, how does it feel to be on this great streak? Asking all these different questions, not necessarily about their like technique or their stance or their style. I really wanted to dig into their mindset. And that's just something that was like really natural for me. I'm always really curious about the way that humans perform and how we process situations and how we overcome obstacles. And so it was during that time, this was back in like 2011, 2010, I started to connect with more NHL goalie coaches. And I first connected with one of my best friends and one of my biggest mentors, Mike Valley, who was a goalie coach for the Dallas Stars back then. And he and I just saw eye to eye on a lot of these different components when it came to the mental game. He's of Swedish descent. And so he has this like very cool European philosophy, and he's really into Eastern philosophy as well. And I'm really into that. And so we just got along really well. And we realized that there wasn't a lot of literature or a lot of content out there in the world about, goaltending and the mental game. But we all know that goaltending is 90% mental. So it was like this weird paradox where it's like, well, we know the mental game is really important and mental toughness is really crucial, but like there's really nothing out there teaching us about this. So that's when we decided to write our first book together, which was called The Power Within. And that book was published, I believe, in like late 2013. So those few years leading up to the publishing of that first book was really where I realized like, wow, this is amazing stuff. It's so cool to be able to learn a little bit more about the mechanics of a goalie's mind at the highest level. And you started to see patterns emerge with the goalies that we spoke to about different aspects of, mental performance. And so that's really what kind of generated that passion for, wanting to learn more about the mind and human performance. And then that kind of led through this journey where, we wrote 4 books together. The 4th one just came out a couple months ago. And then Lift the Mask started back in 2018. So that's really kind of where it started, was just general passion and interest for the mental game and elite goaltending.
This is very inspiring because I talk about 3-4 years since you started Lift the Mask, but I don't think a lot of people actually knows that you have a book back in like almost 10 years ago. And throughout this whole journey that you have in the mental health, you brought up one point while you're talking about this was Mike Valley was more on the Swedish philosophy and all that. I kind of hear about this play style of the European play style versus North American play style is a bit different. But in terms of the mental, how they think, how they like thought about the game, like mental game wise, like is there anything that you discovered actually it's something that you're like, oh, I never know about this? And it's really interesting how the Swedish think about this way.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And that's what I was really curious about too when I first started to travel overseas, 4 or 5 years ago. It was like, why is it so different there? And there are a lot of different aspects. It goes all the way back to just the natural surroundings that these kids grow up in. The culture of, Nordic and Scandinavian and Eastern European, culture. It's really unique. It's really different. And I think what I've learned in terms of like goalie specific culture in Europe and in Scandinavia, like, the goalie is truly valued as the most important component to success. And here in North America, what I've learned, and I experienced this growing up in Texas, goalies are kind of like targets in practice, right? Like they're not really considered the most valuable component to the team. And so it's that kind of culture difference that really kind of illuminated my mind and made me realize that like in Europe, it's so much more holistic. It is about the human first and the athlete second. And in North America, it seems to be different. It's like, how good can you be of an athlete physically? How good is your skill set? And then let's worry about the mental game and like your mental performance and your mental health later. And so that's one of the biggest differences that I personally experienced. Now, everyone's going to have a different experience in terms of how they, correlate success in Europe with European goalies and success in North America. But for me, that was the biggest thing that I noticed. And again, it does go back to the culture. Like in Sweden and Finland, those countries are so much smaller. So it's much easier to get education from like the top goalie coaches in the league down to, your youth goalies. Whereas here in North America, it's like such a wide, such a huge country. And goaltending and goalie coaching is only been around for, a couple of decades here in North America at the youth level. It's taken a much longer time, I think, for the education to catch up and for that culture to change so that we really are focused on, supporting the human element of goalies first and then worrying about the skill set second. So that's like just kind of my general observations of, the culture having a major impact on the influence and the way that goalies develop, holistically as humans and as athletes.
That is, I think this is definitely already an eye-opener for me when you think about just the fundamental difference between seeing goalie as the most important position and then have the athletes to go around them versus the other way. I definitely experienced that a lot in my... I think maybe not on the professional side, like even beer league, I think I felt actually quite important to me, being important in the team. And that was actually a surprise to me because I know that I play other sports like soccer in North America. It's very flipped. Like you play in a competitive level, goalie is like the least person that people worried about. Oh, okay, like nobody want to play goal. Let's rock paper scissors and see who do it. Right. So that experience caught me off guard when I first started ice hockey. I was like, wait, people actually appreciate me being the goalie. I'm like, okay, cool. I love it.
I can see it being different in beer league because there's always a shortage of beer league goalies, right? So they're probably just pumped to have you out there and I agree with that. Like when it comes to beer league, it's like, oh, everyone's so pumped when a goalie shows up because like, all right, now we can play, right? But for me growing up, and I'm curious what it was like for you too. For me growing up, it was just I had to learn it all on my own. There wasn't a goalie coach around to show me what I was doing right or what I was doing wrong, or give me a pat on the back if I was getting shelled in a practice. It really did take a lot of resilience to just keep going, like give up 10 goals, get up and keep going, and I think that's one thing that really, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because when goalies are extremely young, I'm talking 5-6 years old and pucks are going over their shoulders because they're so small. It's really demoralizing. Like it's tough. It's not always going to be super fun. And that's why I think it's just so important that we continue to try and educate, head coaches at the youth level and at the grassroots level or volunteer hockey coaches that might be parents, and just make sure that they understand that they need to go over to that goalie and just give them a pat on the back and be understanding that it is a difficult situation or a difficult position, because if a goalie suits up for the first time and he or she absolutely hates it because they only make a few saves and they never want to be a goalie again, I mean, we're going to continue to kind of have this shortage of goalies and some of these stigmas that are associated with the goalie position. So that's a big part of it. And like, I'm happy that I was able to just kind of grind it out. Like I wasn't too hard on myself. And I just loved being in the net, whether I gave up 100 goals or no goals at all. It was just the joy of, making saves and being in the gear and wearing the mask. So that's a big part of it too, is again, that culture at the grassroots level, in Europe, because it's such a smaller country and the population of, in terms of like hockey players is so much smaller, you will see goalie coaches at those, grassroots levels that are, supporting the human first and really, being enthusiastic and showing passion and not really worrying about results or how many saves you make or your technique. It's just go out there and have fun and like, let's work on some basics. Right. And so I think that's the kind of culture we want to continue to spread here in North America with like youth goaltending.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think the biggest difference between me and a lot of the youth is I started later as an adult. I used to think it's a disadvantage because I saw like, oh, all people around me they started playing as a youth, but I think I found out that was a very naive kind of thoughts because actually in terms of the mental side of games, I actually appreciate the fact that I started as an adult because I already have a lot of my life experience built into my head. I won't take things so seriously once I do it a few times, and I was able to cope when certain things doesn't went the way I wanted to. So I would say that definitely helps, but it's to me it's actually the way I see it's very the opposite. Like I see a lot of the adult goalies here that they start as adult, they take it too casually, and I'm still learning from them to not taking things so seriously myself. If I were to compare myself to them,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, and that's the thing I love about goaltending is like your mindset and your attitude and your character and your personality is going to shine through in terms of how you perform on the ice. And so it's
yes,
like goalies may look the same in terms of like their style, and it's very standardized today compared to, back in the days of Hasek and Felix Potvin, but like when it's comes to personality and how you respond to certain situations and how you overcome these obstacles, every goalie is so unique. Some goalies can be really
yes.
relaxed and still play at a super high level. Other goalies, they get a little bit relaxed and all of a sudden you're like, do you even care, bro? Like it's so unique in terms of the
Yeah.
personality mixing with emotions and the mental game and how you actually go out and perform. That's one of the most fascinating things is like one of the best quotes I ever heard along my journey. And this was from a Swedish goalie coach. He's known as the godfather of Swedish goaltending. His name is Tomas Magnusson. He's the
Mm.
head of goalie development in Sweden. I interviewed him for one of my books, and he said one of the best lines, and it was so amazing because it's one of those lines where it's like so serendipitous and so short, and you're just like mind blowing. He said, "There are as many styles as there are goalies." Okay, and so it's like that was like the best phrase that came out of the whole book. There are as many styles as there are goalies, and I think that is such a great testament to how the mental game and how your emotions interact with performing as a whole can actually be on display on the rink when you're playing a hockey game.
Very true, very true. And the more I play goalie, the more I expose myself to more goalies, see how goalies plays. I think the technique is just so tiny bit of everything right now. Like I used to think, oh, I need to right footwork because I used to how I train. Like I play badminton competitively before, and
Right.
all we talk about is the footwork, the make sure you get the right technique, right? But then like goalies in ice hockey, I was like, wow, just just tiny bit of how you think differently about the game can already change, and these are the things that are very invisible. Like you have to see a goalie to play a few games to see, oh wow, they actually think that way, or you actually have to talk to them about this. And I think, is that something that you would say like while you're writing these books? Because I know you're interviewing a lot of different people who write these books. Is that one of the biggest realization that you have? Is there's just so many different ways to talk about the same topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's like that's why I kind of go back to that phrase I said earlier, like it's a thinking man's game, thinking woman's game, right? Like they say that about chess, but I feel like
Mm.
goaltenders really are some of the most reflective individuals, reflective athletes in the world, because it is so much about who you are as a person and how you process situations and how you process all of the different challenges that come your way. And that's why I think we talk about a lot too. Like you hear this very common phrase, like, I'm just trying to be even keeled, right? Like, oh, I just want to be even keeled. Like, I don't want to get too high. I don't want to get too low. Well, the reason why that's such a great or such a common phrase in goaltending is because we're constantly on this roller coaster of emotions. And,
Yes,
you
yes.
know, I know we're going to get into the mental health topic, but I'll just say, like, mental health is on a spectrum. And I think goaltending performance is on a spectrum. Like, you can start 5 minutes into a game and you make one huge save and you are like on the top of the world, right? Like you are just feeling great. You can do no wrong. You're not thinking about anything. You're just reacting and you feel great. You're in the zone. And then all of a sudden puck goes off a defender's shin pad and goes off the post and in, and you're just like, ugh, like everything just falls out of you. And you're like, I was just on the top of the world and now I am like at the bottom, like what the heck just happened, right? And you don't even have control over it. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's that realization that like the battle is never truly won or lost as a goalie. It's like you win a hockey game, it's like great. I don't even have time to really celebrate it because I've just got to get ready for the next game or the next practice. And
Right.
same thing on the flip side. You lose a hockey game, it's like you just got to let it go because the more you think about that loss or that bad game, it's just going to anchor you down and hold you back from being ready for tomorrow. And so it's this like constant battle in your mind to continue to keep pushing forward and continue to just have this amazing resolve to be able to say, you know what, screw whatever happened in the past, good or bad. Let's just focus on what's coming up next because we got to be ready. And that's part of it. That's why it's just like, you hear that phrase all the time. Every goalie I've talked to, they say it a little bit differently, but it all comes to that same thing. It's like even keeled and balance. And so that's what was so fascinating about interviewing all these different goalies. And it's now that it's been almost 10 years, it's like almost become a generational thing. Like we've talked to goalies, you know, like Marty Turco and Jimmy Howard and older goalies that aren't even playing anymore. And now just recently we've talked to like the next wave of future stars like Cal Peterson and Pavel Francouz and, you know, Connor Hellebuck. And it's amazing how like they all kind of have very similar mindsets, but the way that they explain it and the experiences that they've had are so different, despite the fact that like there are these consistent messages that come through and they all relate to what I said is like balance and learning how to let go of like past failures or whatever's happened in the past.
Yeah. The next, I think this leads to the questions of the kind of what are some tips for beer league goalies would be great, because that's just one thing I'll prepare as well. But you mentioned about, and I agree with you, like there's the up and downs. I would say my up and downs might not, like I realize that my up and downs might not fluctuate as much as some other goalies that I talk with, but I'm very curious from your perspective. I know like you might have a different answer than I have an answer to that, but for your answer to that question of what is the right way to balance that, right? Like is that to make sure that we are not going up and down like crazy, or when certain things you feel so good you try to keep as much as you can? Like how do we keep that balance there? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is just be kind to yourself. Like I think that was something that I really learned in my 20s going into my 30s is that, you know, I used to just get so hard on myself because my expectations to stop every puck were really high because I just wanted to be the best. And part of that was like an ego thing, right? Like, oh, I expect to stop every puck. You know, it's like, no, like you're going to give up goals. I don't care how good you are or what beer league level you're at or where you come from. It doesn't matter. Like you're going to give up goals and you're going to go through stretches where you play crappy hockey. Like that is the reality of being a goaltender. And it happens to everyone at all different times for many different reasons. So that was something that helped me, you know, when I got into my 30s, really start to find a higher level of not only mental performance, but like performance on the ice as well. Is just like being kind to myself and realizing that like having these flaws and going through stretches where I know I'm not playing the best is like totally normal. And normalizing the highs and lows all of a sudden is going to help bring you back to that equilibrium, because it's like when things go great, you're like, you know what, it's great right now, but 2 seconds from now it could totally change. So like, let's just like temper those, like that excitement, you know what I mean? And then on the flip side too, it's like, you might be feeling really, really crappy right now, but you know what? All it's going to take is one big save and I'm right back up again. And so I think it's like you said, Felix, which I loved, is that the fact that you picked up goaltending a little bit later, you had this, a little bit more clarity within that because you've experienced highs and lows in your everyday life. And you know that like, just because you have one bad day doesn't mean you're destined to have bad days for the rest of your life. And just because you have one good day doesn't mean you're automatically going to go out and get a shutout in the next game. That's not how it works. There are very few things that you can actually control as a goalie when it comes to the results. And so that's another like piece of advice I have for the beer league goalies out there is just like, forget about the results, you know, like don't even worry about your save percentage or your goals against average or your win-loss record in beer league hockey. Cause you know what, man, it swings so wildly. There have been seasons where I'm like 20-0-2 with like amazing stats. and
Yeah.
we lose in the first round of the playoffs because 3 guys don't show up or 1 dude's parked drunk.
Oh,
Like it, right? Like you're shaking your head because
yes.
like that's happened before, right? And so I
Yes.
think for beer league goalies, at least in my experience with all the guys that I've played with and in my own experience as well, you do have more success in your 30s and even into your 40s because you are just so happy to be out there on the ice playing.
Yes.
You don't care about the t-shirts or the trophies or the beers or whatever you're going to win. Like you're happy to be with the guys or the girls. You're happy to be with your friends and you're just happy to be out on the ice. And that's another thing that I learned from Mike Valley, my mentor, and like all the pro guys that I've been around is like you play some of your best hockey when you're happy. So just go out and have fun. Like, don't worry about the results. Don't worry about what can go wrong or what might go wrong or, who's watching or anything like that. Like you have to have that singular mindset of I'm just going to go out and have fun. And the next thing you know, all that worry falls away and you start to play great hockey and you're not worried about the results. And then that consistency comes as a result. And look, it took me, solid 15 years to figure that out. And once you figure it out, you're like, oh man, now you're really enjoying it because you're not overthinking. And that's when beer league starts to become really fun again.
What I think the way you describe it is to be happy. The way I describe it is be grateful. I think this is a very powerful thing in terms of not a lot of people realize what grateful means, but when you're truly grateful to have the ice time. And I think I'm very grateful that the ice got shut down last year. Otherwise, I won't start this YouTube channel. I won't start this show. And this gratefulness that we have actually drive us more to do things more without attaching ourselves to the result. And I think this feeling actually means so much to me, and I'm so glad that you're pointing out. And that another thing that I do to improve my game is instead of focusing on myself, I will focus more on my team. Because one thing that I realize is that I can do so much more than making save on the ice. Don't focus on myself so much. When I do, I actually have the opposite effect. I make less save, but it's really interesting when I start to put myself from the team perspective and instead of from my own perspective. And I found not a lot of beer league goalies think that way. So that's I found this a little bit of a unique on myself. But what do you think about that? Like, do you feel like putting the team as a game, like is that a good path to go towards when it comes to your own performance as a goalie?
Yeah, 100%. I love that you brought up gratitude, and there is that phrase out there is like you're not grateful because you're happy because you're grateful, right? I love that phrase, and that's exactly what you're speaking to. And 100%, I think it's super important is like be a good teammate first, and the rest will come together. And I've talked a lot over the years and had discussions with these NHL goalies about that ego. And the more ego you have, the more attention you bring to yourself, the more pressure you put on yourself, and people start to pick up on that. And that's the last thing that you want is for people to see you as a selfish individual, because as the goaltender, it's not, you are the last line of defense, not the first line of defense. You're the last line of defense. And so that is something that you have to appreciate about the position, is that it's not about you and your personal success. It's about what can you do to help your team win a hockey game. It's not about your save percentage. It's not about how many donuts you put up or the individual awards or anything like that. If you get those, that's amazing. And what do you hear NHL goalies say every time they win any kind of an award? They always thank their teammates. Anytime a goalie gets a shutout in the NHL, what's the first thing they say? Well, guys played great in front of me. They made it really easy. They blocked a lot of shots. Even if they just made 65 saves, you hear that all the time, because I think that's just naturally ingrained in a professional goalie's mind. They've learned over the years that the less ego they have and the less they make it about themselves, it is easier to relax a little bit, for the same reasons that we mentioned earlier, is like being able to detach yourself from the results and from the individual accolades. Because again, you will learn very quickly that the more attention you put on yourself and the more demands you put on yourself, it makes it that much harder to actually go out and accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish, which is just enjoying yourself and winning hockey games. And so I think that's really important to remember, is that just like you said, it's not about the fancy saves. It's like, what other things are you doing besides just stopping the puck to help your team win? Are you moving the puck up the ice? Are you, communicating with your defensemen? Are you letting guys know when other players are on the ice or when there's backdoor threats? I mean, and that's just on the ice. There's always so many things that you can be doing off the ice as well. And so, yeah, I think you bring up a great point. Like, that's a really valuable lesson that I feel like you learn it when you get older. And then when you get older and you do learn it, you're like, God, why wasn't I just a little bit like more realistic or like a little bit less, selfish when I was younger? It would have made such a big difference. But it's kind of like that with a lot of things with goaltending. It's like you kind of learn them too late, but when you do learn them and you realize you start to understand how much easier it is to play like a relaxed game and just be yourself.
Yeah, it's very. It kind of reminds me of back in the days when I played competitive badminton. I think I still remember one scenario where I was just so got frustrated. I was just playing with a really old dude on the other side of the court, and he doesn't have the best techniques or best fundamentals, but like when I play against him, I just can't win him. It just frustrates the heck out of me. But what I realized now, I look back, I think the biggest difference between him and I, other than the technique side of things, what he's doing so well to me is he's just so enjoying the game himself, and he does not think about I want to win or what. Like, he just play and he just play better than like, and I have that burden of like, oh, I'm so much better than him, I must beat him, I must do this, like that expectation that I have in myself. Just, it's the mental game that I had. It's not the techniques that I lose to him, it's the mental competition that I lost, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, where are you channeling your energy? Are you focused on what the other guy's doing on the other end, or are you just focused on controlling what you can control on your end? And
Yes.
I think every beer league goalie goes through that experience where you see another guy or another goalie girl on the other end of the ice. Their pads look like they're from 1980,
Yes.
right? And you're like, how is this guy even skating? Like, this guy's 3 times my age. Like, what? And then he stops everything, and you get frustrated because you're like,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like I'm better, right? Like, I'm so much better than this guy, but why is he outplaying me? And it's for that exact reason, because he doesn't give a crap about what you're doing or how you look or that your pads are a lot better. He's just out there pumped to play because he's hasn't played in 2 months, or
Right.
he's older and he appreciates it that much more. And you're going to get frustrated by that. But again, that's another valuable learning lesson, to just let go of the ego. It's not about how good you look or how good you think you are. It's all about, can you get yourself into that mindset where you're just enjoying the game for what it is, and you're going with the flow, and you're just appreciative for the opportunity to play the game.
I can already anticipate a great conversation with people like yourself again about being an emergency goalie, like being grateful to, like, imagine you really got called on the ice and it doesn't matter whether you win or make saves anymore. Like, I would be so excited for you just because of you having this unique opportunity to do this. But we can leave that later. But I'm like, again, it's like seeing people like I forgot his name again, being on the Carolina, right? He got called.
Yeah, David Ayers.
Yeah, David. Yeah. So being that, like, he's probably not the best goalie, but like when he makes saves, like you see the smile on his face, like, to me, I'm just so happy for him. Like, oh my god, like, I don't know what to say. It's
Yeah, it's when Scott Foster got into the game for the Blackhawks.
Oh yeah, Foster, yeah.
And I watched that. I was lucky enough to be watching that game and saw that whole thing go down. I was just like, you know what? I don't think I'm ever gonna see anything like this ever again in my life.
Okay.
And for it to happen again just like a year or two later is truly, truly mind-blowing. And the fact that both of these guys that are older, Scott Foster is my age, he's 38. David Ayers is, early 40s. For those guys to actually go out and even make a save is truly mind-blowing. Again, it's like, this is something that you will never see in any other professional sport, where literally a guy like you and me goes out there and stops pucks in an NHL game and wins an NHL game. Like, it's really mind-blowing. And yeah, I mean, we could talk about it another time. Like, the emergency backup goalie experience is truly insane. And I say it every single time I get asked about it. I am just grateful for the opportunity. I could care less if I ever get into a practice or a game or sit on the bench. I don't care. Just the fact that I can say that I'm an emergency backup goalie for an NHL team as a guy who just came, like, born and raised in Texas and didn't even start skating until he was 12 years old is like mind blowing. Like, if you told 18-year-old Justin that this was going to happen when you were in your mid 30s, I'd just be like, couldn't even comprehend it, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's just one of those things that I got the opportunity because I've been involved with pro hockey here in Colorado since the mid 2000s, and really hopeful to be back next season. Obviously, this year there are no e-bugs because of the taxi squad,
Yeah.
but it's truly a mind-blowing experience, and I'm just extremely grateful that I have the opportunity to do it for the past 3 seasons.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely go deep on a separate episode. But I want to go back to I want to kind of talk about the Goalie Guild and the Lift the Mass initiative. I think one of the big message that I got from it is to build that community that you want. Um, I want to ask you this question: what does a great goalie community look like to you? Like, what is your dream community they want to build in terms of within the goalie community?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about community, I don't just think about scale or size. I think about the individual relationships themselves and how they connect on a broader scale in that regard. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's not about, like, followers on Instagram or Twitter or like social media reach. To me, community is like literally what we're doing right here. Like, it's two people, two goalies having a conversation that have never actually met before, but we have this friendship because we're part of the same guild. We're part of the same tribe. And to me, that is community. And so when we have these conversations and we're spreading, positive messages, and we're talking about, philosophical topics on mental performance and how we experience our lives as goaltenders, like, that's community, right? Like, we are spreading awareness and positive messages that are going to help the rest of the community, regardless of how many people hear it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, we want, a bajillion followers, and we want to have a large audience, and we want our voices to be heard. But more importantly, I think it's like the power of the message. And one ideal I really live by is this ideal of, like, every drop counts. And every drop counts is just the idea that, like, it doesn't matter how big or how many people hear it. It's like, if the message is true and it's a positive message and it's a supportive message and it's going to embrace, diversity and acceptance, that is going to make a bigger impact than reaching a bajillion people, because one person may hear it and that may shift their perspective, or they may learn something from it, and then they can go pass that information along. And so to me, that's what community is. It's getting people to go out and spread positive messages and help eliminate a lot of the stigmas surrounding goaltending, and help educate those that may not understand goaltending as well, or understand the goalie's mind, and just, have a little bit of empathy and be willing to teach or educate other people that are not specifically goalie people, about the wonders of the position, right? And so to me, I think that's something I'm really proud of with the Goalie Guild, which started way back in 2008 as just like a blog, is the fact that, as I have these kind of discussions with someone like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
other people are going to go out and have those similar discussions and talk about these things and want to teach others in the hockey world or in the sports world about, like, these are things that goalies are embracing, right? Like, we think about the human element first. We think about mental health first. Like, we want to be accepting to everyone. Like, we hear the term hockey is for everyone, and you hear some counter arguments like, well, hockey's not really for everyone. Like, look at all the issues that are going on around racism and everything else. But, like, when it comes to goaltenders, I truly feel like goaltending is for everyone. Like, we are
Yes.
very different people. We come from very different backgrounds. And that is one thing I love about goalies is, like, it doesn't matter how different you are to the other goalie. If you guys both wear the pads, you're like best friends no matter what, right? Like, you always get along with goalies. And so that to me is kind of like what community is. And I feel like that's why I told you, the first time we talked, I was like, bro, I'm so glad you're doing this. Like, this is awesome. Like, the Asian goalie is like awesome. Because that's what we need, right? Like, we need more voices, and we need to be able to have these kind of conversations. And that's how you build the community. It's not by, paying for a bunch of Instagram ads to get your brand out to as many people as possible. Like, you can do that if you want, nothing against that. But like, I've personally never paid a penny for advertising or marketing, for the Goalie Guild. That's not what it's about. It's just about like the mental health stuff and the support and the foundation component, and the community grows from there.
How long have that Facebook group, the Lift the Mask Facebook group, is there for like 3 years since?
Yeah, so Lift the Mask, like the concept of Lift the Mask is only from 2018. And so, between 2018 and like the end of the season in 2019 is when we like organized like, some volunteers to support, got it linked, like the idea linked to like the foundational side of it, where we're donating $100 to every goalie that wants to, get some mental health care. So I think the Facebook group is actually only like a year and a half old, maybe 2 years old. So it's still very, very new. And it's great to see that, like, I think we're getting close to 1,000 members, or like 900 members. And everyone in there, like, anytime anyone asks a question, it's great because, again, you get a really diverse range of answers, which is great. Like, it may not be exactly what you want to hear, but just the fact that there are so many diverse people in that group, and that they're all willing to support, whoever's got a question or someone struggling with a certain component of the mental game or their mental health. That's where that Facebook group's got a lot of value, and it's very community driven. Like, there's no standard posts or anything. It's like literally open for anyone to post. They can vent, they can ask questions, they can get resources. It's a really welcoming and diverse group, and that's really cool.
I really got to say this because I have joined quite a bit of different groups in Facebook, Reddit, and some other groups. And for the scale that you have right now with 900, almost 1,000 members, I'm very, very impressed by the quality of people you have in there, the quality of the posts in your group. It's like, to me, it's quite something I wanted to learn from you. And that's why I asked this question, because like, if I would just give out some examples, right? Like, if I in the group, I would never see someone just like, oh, hey, here's my video, watch it. Like, I saw a lot of, not to call out people and not to say it's wrong, but what I'm saying is, it's the meaning, it's the type of questions, the type of posts that have some certain meanings into it that actually make value to the rest of the people in the group, versus when you are just posting a video and without saying even a word, oh, here's my latest video. It's just like, it feels like more of a promotion of yourself than you're actually trying to give something meaningful to people. Mm-hmm. And that's what I see the biggest difference that you have in the Lift the Mask group versus the rest of the group. I see is all the posts that we have in there, not only that, hey, we're engaging a conversation, but I feel safe to post something without people thinking, oh, it's just another one of those like promotion kind of posts, right? So that's something I really want to learn from you, and how you go from beginning to now, how you keep that right still so like that, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, like I said, I've been around, I've been doing this since the mid 2000s, so I think people recognize the Goalie Guild brand as like, we're strictly here to give back. Like, I run a nonprofit foundation. I've never paid myself a single cent, and every dollar that comes in goes right back out again. And we actually operate in the red every year. Like, I put money in to keep this thing growing. And I think people realize that, because I don't come off sales pitchy. I'm not trying to shill books or shill art or shill camps or anything like that, right? Like, that's not the purpose behind the Goalie Guild. We'll sell a little bit of apparel here or there, but it's like, you don't really see that. You just see us trying to give back as a community. And because it's community driven, and it's not just me posting like my thoughts and what I think should be doing, be happening. I think people do feel safe because they know our purpose is truly community driven, right? Like, we are doing scholarships, we're doing mental health, we're doing the Gear Givers program. Like, it's all about giving back. And so it makes it, I think, a little bit easier for people to come in and be accepting and know that there's no like smoke and mirrors, or there's no ulterior motives, or I'm not going to ask you to sign up for a newsletter and buy a membership or anything like that. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not our model, right? Like, our model is strictly like nonprofit, 501c3 public charity. Our books are public, so everyone can see the money that comes in and see how much goes out on our GuideStar account. And so I think that's why, even though I'm truly busy and like the Goalie Guild is not my full-time job, I always know I can have the support of the community to help keep things moving in the right direction. And so that's something that takes a long time, right? Like, this didn't happen overnight. It's not like I just came out of nowhere. Like, I've been committed to this purpose and this passion driven career since I got out of college, since I was a kid. Right. And so I think people have realized that over the years. They understand that, like, I'm in it for the right reasons. And so anything that's Goalie Guild related is truly for the benefit of the community of the Goalie Guild. And that's why I chose the name, right? Like, that's why it is what it is. So, but yeah, there's really no secret recipe or like hidden strategy on like how I do it. It's just it's all about who you know, not what you know. And that's something I learned at a really young age from my dad is it's people over pucks. It's the relationships that you build. It's, being genuine and authentic and, not worrying about being the best or anything like that. Just build good relationships with people and help people because you genuinely want to help them, and it'll all come back to you in the end. And so that's been a real driving force behind everything I do with the Goalie Guild.
And it's such a new fresh air in the brief. I just breathe in because like it has been a while since I talked to someone who talked about network. Is who you know, not what you know. Like that to me, it resonates with me, especially now. Like, I heard about this a lot, but I never truly embraced this concept until I started this Asian Goalie show. It's like, hey, when you have someone volunteering to get onto your show and actually talk about this, it not only you learn from it, but you also expand that network. And when everything just makes so much easier. Right, when you have the right people, when you have the right community together. So a big kudos to you, Justin. Like, I would love to say, like, despite we haven't known each other for a long time, but I can really truly feel that you are consistent for a long time about a big passion that you have, and not a lot of people even have that passion and be able to stay up to what they believe in. And that to me is a very unique thing that you have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think, again, I just try to get people to realize that, like, we all have this power within us to do these things. And that's what I love too. I love bringing people into the community and supporting what they're doing, because they're going to go on and do great things for the community as well. And I do think goalies have a little bit of an advantage. Like, let's say we were like a football quarterback guild. It'd be tougher because there's a lot more football quarterbacks out there than there are hockey goalies, right? So true. You're a tight-knit guild, and that's why I love that medieval concept to like the goalie community, because we're all trying to master our trade, but the only thing that keeps us connected as a community is if we share and we help each other get better. And I feel like that's something that naturally comes with being a goalie. Like, there's only two of you out there. So when you see another goalie struggling, like, you have that compassion, you have that empathy, because one, you've probably been there before, and two, you know exactly what he or she is going through. So of course you want to help because they're alone, right? Like, what they're going through. And so that is something I love about the community. And it really does bring that like medieval concept of like, we are a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and we're always willing to bring others in. But if you're coming in, you better be in it for the right reasons, which is to help the community, because that's what's going to help us thrive. Like the odds are stacked against us as goalies. Like I said, like, we may be protected with this gear, but like, it is the toughest position in hockey and truly in any sport. And so when the odds are stacked against us, you've got to be able to lean on that brotherhood or that sisterhood to help get you through. And again, that reinforces that concept of like, sharing is going to get you further than anything else will. If you keep all your info and you keep yourself close to your chest and you're not willing to talk or network or be friendly or get to know others, it's gonna hold you back. Like, nothing great was ever accomplished on your own, right? Like, I think that was
Yes.
a quote from an NBA player recently on social media, and I loved that line because it's so true. It's like, no one can accomplish greatness on their own. Like, you're gonna need help along the way, and the more that you help others, the more help you're gonna get in return. So that's it's cool that you asked that or like brought that up, because a lot of people think about the Goalie Guild and they're like, oh, like it's just you running it, and it's like, no, like it's a concept sort of thing. It's like a
Yes.
conceptual idea. And so it's great because I actually got to explain it like without really being asked the question directly, because it's not an easy thing to answer. So
It is
good.
not. I think it is an experience, and the reason why I brought it up is it is really truly based off the experience that I had in the group. It's not something that I just saw and scroll down and what's going on. Like, it's actually from the point I joined the Facebook group to you connect with me right away to, well, actually before that even I talked to
Yeah, you,
Des, who is a new
yeah,
member,
Des.
right?
Yeah, right.
And actually that actually spin off a new question that I wanted to ask to make sure I cover this is, when Des explaining his experience being a beer league goalie, to me it's one thing that I think it's a very big topic that I wanted to go deeper on, is how playing beer league as a goalie have impacted the life. Like, it's how they are interconnected,
Mhm.
right? Like, Des mentioned one quote to me that just still stuck in my mind. He said something along, if it's not the goalie position, he wouldn't be so much of a happy person that
Mhm.
he is because of his mental health issue that he used to have. From your perspective, do you see a lot of examples, or do you is yourself an example of, because of the goalie position, you actually make yourself so much brighter as a person, in life?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
how does
absolutely.
that impact your life, right?
I mean, for me, like, especially now, like, I think people just want to feel connected and they want to feel valued. And
Mm-hmm,
and I
mm-hmm.
think that's something that goaltending really brings to people that might be suffering from loneliness or depression, or um, are in dark times where they feel alone. And like, we're dealing with that every day night right now, especially with the pandemic. And I think that's what goaltending brings a lot of people, is like, you feel connected because you know you're like a big part of a team, and like everyone loves to see you because it's like, all right, we can play, we've got a
Yeah,
goalie, right?
yeah.
Like that, we
Yes.
talked about that a little bit earlier. And you feel valued because you know that like wins and losses hinge on your ability to stop pucks. And even when you lose a game, I think being a goalie feels great because there are a lot of situations where like you made a great save and you gave yourself a team a chance to win, or you make a save and the team goes down and scores a goal, or you get a tap on the pads from a defenseman, or guys come up to you and say great save or like great game even if you lose. And so I think that's why so many people get so much joy. I mean, I get joy out of that too. It's one of the best parts, is just knowing that, again, you're part of the team's success. You're part of something bigger than yourself.
Right.
And I think people really need that right now, for a lot of different reasons. And that's one of the things I miss about playing beer league hockey right now, or being able to go to Avs games, is like you feel like
Yes.
you're a part of something bigger. And we talked about the experience side of things, and so that's what it is for me, at least, is I grew up with confidence issues in grade school and high school. I was like even skinnier than I am now. Like, I weighed 120 pounds soaking wet in grade school and high school. And I was never popular, and I was really into like nerdy stuff and into video games and stuff like that. I was not a popular athlete. I was one of the like weird, like quiet cast off athletes. But at least I knew that my teammates, even if we weren't friends in school or away from the field or the rink, um, my teammates really appreciated the fact that I put in the effort to be a goalie, because
Yes.
again, most people don't want to do it. And that was something that was huge for my confidence as a human being that was just trying to find myself and find my voice and find my inner confidence. Was like, oh wow, like, yeah, maybe we're not like friends in school, and like they're jocks and they would never hang out with me, but like at least
Yeah.
I know they appreciate the fact that I show up.
Yeah.
And they do acknowledge the fact that I've got some skills that they don't have, like they could be the coolest dude in school, but like they're not going to stand in front of a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot. They're like, hell no. But you get that acceptance from them and you see that they value you, and that does so much for your inner confidence. And I think seeing you nod your head, and I think a lot of goalies are like, yeah, it's so true. Like, it's just great to know that you feel valued. And especially now during the pandemic, it's like I talked to so many beer league guys and they just miss the experience. They don't care about anything else. They just want to get back into the locker room and get on the ice because of that thing, or that reason. And that is like a big part of like why goaltending is so special. You can gain so much confidence. You can learn so many life skills, and it can truly change your life. I feel like that's kind of what I got from Dez's conversation, and his story was super powerful because again, there was another guy that like literally came out of nowhere. Like he joined the group and he was comfortable enough to just spit out this like really intense stuff. And kudos on you to reach out to him and have him on your show too, because I think that was therapy for him. And it's always therapy for goalies to be able to talk about these things with other goalies.
Actually, like I would do the same like you do. Like I would never give kudos to myself, but I give kudos to the guests, right? Especially for Des. I'm almost shocked when he shared his story with me, and I was like, wow, for someone like that to share this publicly in front of people is definitely not an easy thing at all. And I did my job to reach out to him, but it takes 99% of the effort from him to actually go on and actually share it. So like definitely a big kudos to Des, if Des you're listening to this episode.
We'll make sure he hears it. We'll put, I'm glad you're I love that you do this on Twitch, because I know that there's like always access to the video after the fact. So
yeah, for sure. I'll actually post this on YouTube as well. So I definitely feel like these evergreen content have, you like you said before, you mentioned something along the line with these things you would never know. Somebody ran into your video, they get something out of it, and they share it. It's that positivity, that message that needs to be shared. It doesn't matter whether it's live or sometimes like I just want to make sure this message is evergreen, and I have this platform, I have this portfolio of videos that people can go back and see what happened, right? Especially with people who are new to beer league goalies like myself. When I first started, I was so scared about the confidence issue, the being inclusive issue, like all those kind of things. I experienced all that, and I really hope to address that in my show in different ways, interviewing people, speaking from my own experience. And I actually found so much more powerful when it actually comes from a different person's mouth other than my mouth.
Yeah. Well, and I'll speak to that really quick. I think we're getting close on time, but I'll speak to that really quick, because I know that's like a big purpose of your show and your channel. And I love it because I think goaltending is a calling, and I think that calling can come at any point in your life. And I see a lot of people that turn into goalies in their 30s, 40s, even 50s sometimes, and they're just, you know what, they wake up one day and they're like, that looks cool as hell, I'm just going to go do it. And I think that's the message I want to spread, is like, yes, I've been doing this, a long time, but you know what? I grew up in Texas. I didn't even know hockey was a thing until I was 12 years old. And I didn't even really start playing like organized ice hockey until I was like 15, almost 16 years old. And that's like ancient for a lot of kids that might be lucky enough to start when they're 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And you don't have to start skating when you're 4 years old to become a good goalie, because we talked about that too. It's like, you don't have to be great to win hockey games. You don't have to be great to stop pucks. Like, you just got to want it. And you got to be willing to go out there and fail and fall on your face a bajillion times and still just like wake up or like get up with a smile on your face. And I think that's what it was for me when even though I was like just becoming a teenager, it was late for like trying to be a, college or a pro goalie. But like, I didn't care how many times I fell on my face or how many goals I gave up. I was just like, dude, that was so fun. Like, I can't believe I'm like skating on ice right now. Like, what is going on here? Like, this is so cool. I'm wearing this, like, it was just the sheer joy of like putting on the gear and feeling like I was a knight in armor. That was a confidence thing too. Like, I was always the smallest, skinniest guy in any sport that I played. But when I was a goalie, I was like, impervious. Like no one was going to mess with me. And that brought confidence, and that was just like fun for me. And so that's my message to everyone out there is like, gear's not really as expensive as you think it is. There's lots of good stuff out there. If you need help, there's a bajillion goalies out there that are going to help you. Felix is going to help you. I will help you. Like, let's get you out there and try it, because as soon as you try it, you're going to love it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the great message. I think that's really a great kind of to end the way to end the show. One last question I have. I want to, if someone were to take one thing away from this show, other than being kind of like open to talk about mental issues, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to all beer league goalies out there in order to improve their game, improve their life through mental?
Yeah, I think never stop exploring what's out there. I think it's a different kind of a message. I'm sure I probably could have come up with a better one. Like I'm sure 10 minutes from now I'll be like, oh, I should have said this. Like I think like that constant being in a constant state of learning is really important. And I don't just mean like learning about technique and stuff. I mean like learning about yourself. I keep a journal. I write every day about just like random stuff that happens or like random thoughts that pop up into my head. And I'm always really keen on hearing what goalies say in interviews and articles and conversations, because that's where the true value lies. Like if you want to be better at a goalie, just watch and listen to what pro goalies are doing. Like it's going to help you. They're all wizards, right? Like there's not a lot of good goalies out there. So if you're talking to a pro goalie or you hear from a pro goalie or you see something from a pro goalie, like soak that stuff up, because that is like gold. And that's why we wrote these books. It's not about what we think. It's like, we're just interviewing NHL goalies because their experiences are what gives you insight and wisdom. And the more you can learn from other goalies' experiences, goalies that have gone through the highs and the lows and have traveled that journey to elite goaltending, there's so much wisdom in that, and it's going to help you get better. And you can learn that stuff every single day. And so that would be my piece of advice is like, never stop learning, and always make sure you're just trying to soak up as much as you can from the guys that are, guys and girls that are playing at the highest level, because that's just going to make you 1% better every day.
Very, very well said. Thank you, Justin, for sharing that. So for people who would love to connect with Justin, don't worry about it, because Justin is like probably the nicest guy that you can ever meet. That he never had the ego in himself, and so don't feel sad that this show is over and you can connect to anyone, because this is very opposite. Like we're all about connection. So if you were to connect with us, especially with Justin, with the Lift the Mask group, there is actually a Lift the Mask Facebook group. I'm sure if you guys search the Lift the Mask Facebook group, you'll find them, and as soon as you put in the application, you'll get accepted into there. And so Lift the Mask. Actually, Lift the Mask also have a little scholarship that's going on for people who are looking for a cheap or more affordable options to get mental advice. There's actually a scholarship that's going out there. More information you can find in the Lift the Mask website. As for me, exclusive content about my beer league goalie journey, full show and highlights will be posted on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching this here in Twitch, we cover a lot. So if you want to replay, you can also, you can stay in the Twitch and watch the replay there, or you can go to my YouTube channel as well. If you have any questions, suggestions, and you would like to interact with a group, people like myself, Beer League Goalie, alongside with other goalies, you can join the Asian Goalie Community Discord server as well. And next week, we're going to continue our topic of the mental game we will play to discuss more mental health and how it impacts our lives and our game. So thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate the precious 1 hour of your weekend to join us. So have a great week, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you guys next week.